wanted to talk about conception and perception, and how, as we go through different states of awakening, we find ourselves acclimating to a higher and higher perspective of consciousness. This was really poignant to me last night. We ended up going to a rodeo here in Costa Rica, and of course it's a cultural celebration. Definitely noticing all of the individuals, very excited about the event. But what struck me as so uncomfortable in terms of where I am in my consciousness was the lack of understanding. So just no conception on the collective's perspective about the concept of doing unto others as we would have done unto ourselves. And this is again where I feel sometimes the teachings can only go as far or so far as the perception and conception of where any point or person in consciousness is currently calibrating. I'm going to delineate on this a little bit more so that I can bring it into application. So depending on wherever you are in consciousness, this may or may not make sense, and that's not wrong or right. So the difficulty I had was that it was very evident to me that when this bull was put into the middle of this arena, and there was all of these, drunken individuals chasing it and, kicking at it, like the bull would come very, not aggressively along the sides of the arena. It was simply just going to try to protect itself. And all of these human beings were kicking at it and throwing things at it and yelling at it. And I was looking into the eyes of this creature because we were right there, and you could see that it was just completely scared. It was exceptionally cruel what was being done to this point of consciousness. So again, the understanding of that creature, that bull, is a faction of consciousness. This is a creature, this is a being, an organic being that conceives the outside world just as you or I do. It has sight, it has its visual cortex, it wants to protect itself. It's experiencing its external world. And of course, just like you or I, in a setting with its offspring, with its family, it would want to protect its young, it wants to raise its children. It doesn't matter what life form we look at, each and every creature has the same innate patterning. It desires to find a mate. It desires to procreate, to bring life forth, to protect that life. I would call it love, love its offspring, love its children. This is no different than human beings. And, it wants to survive, it wants to eat. Specifically, cows, or, those species that we compartmentalize as, of the bovine order. They're very traditionally gentle creatures. They're grass-fed. These aren't aggressive creatures. And myself doing, volunteer work in working with animals that had survived things like mass farming environments where, again, very, very cruel, no regard for the animals' lives. I had the beautiful experience to work with a bull named Thor, and gentle, just a gentle, lovely, beautiful creature, huge, of course, but very gentle with all of the creatures, on that farm. Would definitely bend down and interact with the pigs and the geese and the chickens. And it's quite interesting when you take away fear from any organism, from any animal, how beautiful and lovely the interaction is and the experience. So, oh, there's a car coming up the driveway here, so I'm just going to wait till it passes. But how incredibly lovely the experience of just raw interaction with the natural world becomes. Another really beautiful example that we can take from this is the Galapagos Islands. So my aunt actually had an opportunity to go to the Galapagos Islands, and she was telling me, all about how interesting it was in terms of, biological research, that these animals had not had any experience with human cruelty. So they had not experienced that genealogy or that fear mechanism that over generations and generations has come into the consciousness of creatures that, are on the mainland. And so they would just literally be walking down a path, and these beautiful big creatures would just like have a nap in front of them, like just had no fear of humans. And it was really incredible to interact with the natural world when it was not in fear of us. And so why am I talking about all of this? What is the point? What I'm trying to teach is that the principle of humans having domain over the earth, or because we have this certain ability for intelligence, that means that we should destroy other life forms, or that we should attack them or hurt them, or somehow use them for our sport. This is a misuse of dominion. This is a misuse of guardianship. We are the guardians, or we are supposed to be the guardians and the protectors of planet Earth, not to be using the natural world and the creatures, in a way that we are bullies, that we are bullying them and hurting them and impressing fear into our natural world, into the collective consciousness of the other species that we inhabit the planet with. And this has always bothered me so deeply, just as it did last night when I was at this rodeo. It was just, there was no concept of consciousness in this mass group of people of how what they were doing to this living creature was so wrong. And I just kept thinking, what if the tables were turned? What if that was one of you in this ring with all of these giant creatures, drunk and, yelling and having this anger towards you, that you never did anything to them, kicking at them, throwing alcohol bottle. Like, it was just not right on all fronts. I couldn't understand it. And I couldn't understand how this was a celebrated cultural, I just didn't get it. And I remember too walking up to the truck where all of these bulls were being held, and I was right there and just looking in their eyes, and they weren't smashing at the bars. They weren't angry. You could see when you took a moment to look in their eyes that they were just sad. It was this sadness. It was this misunderstanding for how their consciousness encapsulated into this body that they were in could end up in such a state, and again, stacked side by side, no conception of what that would feel like to be transported that way. I mean, I know we're at the top of a mountain here, and we had to squish together for, I think, 4 minutes to get down the mountain to kind of cram all of us into this vehicle. And like, that was so uncomfortable just to do that. But to imagine, no food, no water, to be jammed into this truck and transported in the heat for God knows how long, it's just cruel. It's just thoughtless. It is not doing unto others as you would have done unto yourself. And this principle isn't taught thoughtlessly. It's not taught from the premise of, we can pick and choose. I remember, I think I was probably 6 or 7, and I was actually sitting in church, and I remember one of the pastors saying, it's not up to you in terms of scripture for you to pick and choose what you like. And it kind of, I sat there and I thought about it, and every time I've ever been in a church, I really try to understand the words of the scripture and what is being taught. And when you look at it in its totality, so often it's taught wrong. I mean, and I don't mean wrong in the sense of that they're deliberately trying to teach it wrong, but they're teaching principles from an unconscious place where they're not taught in their totality. When we have a concept, when we're teaching a concept, it must apply in its totality to all aspects of life. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, well, today I'm going to be kind to the people that I want to be kind to, or to the creatures I want to be kind to. So I'm going to pick and choose, and kindness, I will dole it out as I see fit. No, kindness has to be a reverberation of the totality of everything you are in every moment. And that's where you have to always be making the highest calibration of your understanding for your consciousness in the moment. That needs to be the bedrock, the foundation of how you live your life, with the understanding that you are always growing and learning. So this is the teaching of not to judge. So what did I do when I was seeing a set point of lower consciousness in that moment? It's not about judgment. It's not about condemning others. It's not about seeing them as lower or seeing them as less than. It's about understanding that they do not understand. They know not what they do. What does that mean? It means that they have not the conception to understand the pain they're inflicting. They have not the conception to see the breadth of the suffering that they are impacting on another consciousness. And when we can do this, when we can observe in this faction that is through the lens of grace, so through the lens of non-judgment, through the lens of unconditional love, we fall into a place of absolute non-attack. That is the focal point, or that is the point at which we can then teach. Because when we teach in this gentle way, we are not condemning those that don't understand. We are not igniting the ego to have a pushback against what we are saying. We are merely suggesting that one open their heart through now a deeper lesson and a deeper level of understanding. And that is the principle of the core teachings of our existence here on planet Earth, and the core teachings of what we are here to do. Each and every living being, every conscious living being comes with a different set point or calibration of how they perceive and how they conceptualize reality. And from that set point, they are either rising in consciousness or lowering their faction of consciousness. And sometimes this is automatic, sometimes this is through trauma, sometimes this is through service to self. And when we talk about raising our understanding, usually these principles that any given consciousness is integrating is through unconditional love and service to others. Okay, I'm going to wrap this video up, and I'll see you in the next video. But hopefully there was a little bit of understanding in the examples that I've given in this video, and I will layer them into the next videos as well.